Hello, thank you for watching another interview with the authors of the Midwest Fantasy Sampler. Today we're speaking to C.E. Linares and M.R. Moraine, authors of the Never Told series, and talking about their short story, Hugo's Rise. Welcome to the interview.
Hey,
Oh, thank
thanks for having
you.
us.
Thank you. Yeah. Excited to be here.
So, what is the overall plot of the series Never Told?
I guess I could take that one since
Yeah,
it's
you
kind of
can.
my
Yeah.
baby. Uh, I started writing this series about, I want to say like 10 years ago, somewhere deep in the realms of when I was playing like Final Fantasy 4 or 10, 11. I gotta get my numbers right. And it's one of those things that like as just a creative, you always get like ideas of things you want to see or hear or whatever, right? But I was never a writer by any means. Like I never went into this creative process thinking that I could write a book because I was a visual guy. I loved movies. I loved, doing all these things like visually and drawing. I'm not a great drawer, but I loved comic books and stuff like that. And it seemed like such a far thing to do, but it came to the point where like you can't really do something by yourself like you can a book. A book you have complete control, and then you can just kind of run through with it, and you just got to be good at describing and letting people know what you're trying to get across. So it just this long time ago idea of what why there were no male cat boys. They're called Mithras in Final Fantasy 11. I'm like, where the heck are all these people? There's only one, or like how do they treat them? And then that kind of got the ball rolling about how having somebody who is so unique or so special and how they would be treated. And a lot of times it's just like, oh, that'd be great, but like it, they would be treated very differently. And the story was really about a coming of age and um, how we interact with the world and how we find our place in it and stuff like that. So it was just I just took that opportunity and said, I'm gonna start writing. We'll see what happens, but it's uh it's not bad because if you take the time, you kind of just go at it and you revise, as you probably know too, is that you uh you can get there and nothing is ever perfect that first time, right? So,
Mhm. Yeah, I just rewrote my first book entirely from start to finish this
oh,
year because I was like, the last 8 years have changed a lot as a person. I've changed a lot as a writer. And looking at my first book versus my latest book, I'm like, this isn't representative of what
sure.
I can do anymore. So I want to introduce people on a higher note. And so yeah, like I said, the
Yeah.
first attempt is never perfect, but you're able to keep hammering and rewriting and rewriting. Yeah.
So that's where it came about, and then we just as we try to expand the world and letting other people do stuff in it, and that's where I kind of got Kate into the whole mix. And it's I think it's a little easier because we're married and we live in the same place and everything, and we generally get along, so we can work with each other to figure out this stuff, like which relationship doesn't have its ups and downs, right? But
Right.
she says right. Um, but yeah, it was just I know that she wanted to get into writing, and I was like, hey, I got this kind of idea, and I'd love to develop it. Here's kind of the plot points I want to do, and then she wrote The Valkyries of the Greater Wilds, following that kind of outline, and but she filled in so much of the stuff that I never thought of, and then we start making characters that arguably I even like better than some of the stuff that I did, and I love my characters, but Hugo, as you talk about, is such a wonderful, like, just complicated person, but fun to follow. And, he has his loves and dreams and stuff like that. And if you read Kate's book, Valkyries of the Greater Wilds, he's there and she talks about him because it's a journal in the first person. Um, but you never know what really happens to him. He's always just kind of like a accessory and like a ancillary character. So now we got a chance to do more with that.
Yeah, that's cool. So there's something you touched on there that about your world building process. So the single, like the male being the rarity in a species, was very much a world building mechanic that featured prominently in the one book of yours I've read, the Sun. And I was very intrigued by the choice to use that mechanic because the way it was structured with this species relying on rare males for propagation could have become so awkward so quickly.
Sure. Sure,
and could have
absolutely.
become very painful to read.
Right.
And yet, it's also an interesting question because it does, beg the question, what would the mechanics of a civilized society be if their race, followed this somewhat different genetic pattern? And I thought you did a good job of, walking the line between exploring that question and not making the reader feel like it was too odd or uncomfortable.
Sure.
And so one of the questions I was actually thinking about asking was why that mechanic came up and what made you decide on that. So I guess I have the answer, your Final Fantasy. So
Right. It's basically that, And to that fact too, it's just like and you're right, I didn't want to make it, in lack of a better words, gross, right? You didn't want it to, like, there is a power dynamic, and
yeah,
regardless of which way it goes, it's never a great thing. But it was one of those things that, and we touch upon it even more in the second book, and how it's not just, I don't want to give it too many spoilers, but how it's not just a natural thing either.
mhm.
Um, and as again, I'm going to spoil the first book because I'm hoping somebody's read this and whatever, or it doesn't ruin anything. But the males are very powerful, and they're seen as almost like they have to be, you know, um, contained. Otherwise, that power, the recklessness that's inside them, is going to cause more damage, and they need them to, like you say, propagate to be that I don't want to say savior, but it's like the continuation of the tribe. So it's either that or they die. Like what's the choice? You know?
Interesting. So I think in kind of what we just explored there, we've actually already answered some of the other questions I asked. But one thing I picked up on that surprised me was you said that Kate wrote the first story, the Valkus of the Greater Wilds, and I had always assumed that the Sun was the first one written. So I'm kind of curious,
Oh,
like Kate, how did it come about with creating Valkus of the Greater Wilds? How did the world building for that function? Because clearly you were coming from the initial idea for a world from Rio, and then you were the one crafting the first story in it. So, like, how much did it diverge from the initial idea, and how much new elements did you create and add through that first book? How did that all work?
That is a great question, and I do want to apologize. So, The Sun was the first book that was written.
right.
However,
Oh, my mistake.
chronologically, Valkis does happen about 100 years prior to The Sun, but just takes place starting initially from the eastern side of the continent, and then they travel west. But I still really love the question though, because how much did I add? How much did I you sort of supplement the story with. I didn't add too much because I left the magic and the world building, mostly the magic, and when I say magic, Yarick and Alterescence. I didn't add anything new to that because I knew that when we were deciding who was going to do what with Falcus, I knew that I didn't want to make any adjustments, anything new really, and or add anything new to what already existed in Nivold. And when I say that, mostly to the hard rules of it. I did want to add character. I did want to explore more with those Valkis and how Avali is describing them. So in a way, I only wanted to supplement the world rather than make any like hard adjustments to it. And I think I veered a little bit from the question, but
Sure.
Oh no, that's all fitting, and I like veering. I like new elements coming up that works
sure.
the best. So tell me a bit about the world of Nivold, like either one of you, like either of your own observations on it. When I was reading it, when I was reading The Sun, I came across descriptions of the Valkis that made me think there were elements that were kind of mechanical or something going on. Like there was a lot of steam involved with them. And then I think Rio, you kind of explained to me that it's more so their manipulation of the Yarick, the magic, and the alterance in the world, but there
Sure.
were certain elements that kind of sounded like there was sort of technology and magic intermingling. And then when I read Hugo's Rise, there was definitely more of that. So why don't you guys kind of
Yeah.
tell me a bit about how magic and technology and nature all kind of form a three-part system in this world and how that varies between the races?
Right. I think one reason why Kate probably wanted to get into this too is that I did want to definitely run on that whole four element system, right? Earth, fire, wind, water. And Kate's a big fan of Avatar,
The
not the
Last
blue
Airbender.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. um, so it was just like I just always loved the idea of how those interact, and like back in the old day with alchemy, there's always the four elements, and depending if you talk about like the uh Asian cultures that had like the metal, and I forgot there's another one too. They kind of updated that or had a different view of that, but uh nature as the elements and how those play into like the natural world was really important. Like, and a lot of the magic, all the magic is done through stones. Like we call them Yark stones. The human side, like that's on the east side of the world, they call it alterescence, which so they're basically the same thing. Yark is magic of the tribal realm, and then alterescence is just what the civilized people call it. It's the same thing though. It's just how they discovered it. And with the Yark stones, the Minyari, they can basically use them like batteries. We say like they imbue the power into these stones and then recover them later. Um, and with the Valkis, they just do that naturally. Their body is like the Yark stone. Their body is got minerals and things that generate these elements to affect the world. And again, without being too spoilery, if that's a word, um, they the Valkis are more or less caretakers, and they've been giving because you see a lot of them, and I do describe them like avian-like for the Suqua, or the Kortorogs are almost like bears, or kind of like uh, mammalian type characters, and but they've been enhanced. Let's say they've got a little bit different look and the ability to use this energy. So they're caretakers, and you'll find out in like even Falcons of the Greater Wild how they have a purpose. Like you'll see like the Kodorogs are like the caretakers of the Force, or the Suqua, they're kind of different, like only because I don't think I know they've evolved into a little bit smarter, because they're like crows almost, and they're smart, and they've grown past their initial caretaking of the world to find other things, to form things like language, and to do things like Hugo's rides, like to form martial arts, and that's a very big cliffhanger at the end. Um, but we want to explore that too. So, and where that side of the world does everything naturally, the human side, the children of man, and the Alfir, they have found out how they can do the exact same thing, but through mechanical means, and therefore like forcing elements into stones and then recovering back that through, like they might make a respirator, or in Hugo's Rise, the Suqua have also learned from the Children of Man how to do that too. So it's just like it's this weird, like they're stealing that technology and now using it, and but they all fear kind of it's kind of like the invention of like gasoline power, or even steam power or nuclear power. It's just like it's elevating these people past what they would have normally done. Like the human men would just have been tribal, just like anything else. So that's
I
basically
love
it.
I love something that came up there where you said, I think. And I love it when that happens to authors, when they're discussing their own world and they start slipping into phrases like I think, or I found, or I
Sure.
learned. Because so much of what we do is exploratory.
Yeah.
Like we don't always have all the answers ourselves. And it very much feels more like you're discovering than you're creating at times. And I
Absolutely.
like how that even
Yeah.
creeps into our language a bit.
For sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because it could change. Hopefully not, once you get past a certain point, right?
Well,
But there's
that's
always something
all.
new to discover.
Yeah, sorry about that. But it's also one of those things that like I try not to change too much once I've established something, because I don't particularly like changing something just to fit the story. It's when you have that box, figuring out how to use that box or fit into that box, makes you almost more creative, sometimes. And I
Well,
like
it's our
to think,
agreement with the reader. It's like, I've established this box. You have to buy the fact that there are dragons, or that there's alterants, or that there's like,
sure.
we give them the parameters of this is what you have to believe. And we shake hands on it at the outset. And if we veer from it too far as we go in, it's like, well, we've broken our trust with the reader. and that
For sure.
suspension of disbelief is kind of in jeopardy.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Very well said.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was one reason why, when going into Valkis, that I knew that I wanted to tread very carefully with one, knowing that it's ultra-essence from that eastern side of the continent where Child of Man is, and what I knew about Yarick on the western side with the Minyari, and trying to be very careful with not adjusting too much, but still having fun within that creative box. So it's a fun process just to
yeah.
work with an already established magic system, but also one that is we're learning as we go to a degree, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so you mentioned like the men on the eastern and the Minyari on the western and stuff, and obviously there's differences between the cultures. Were there any real world influences behind those differences in your guys' minds, or were they pretty much just abstract? Or abstract is the wrong word, but were they
Sure.
completely in like created, or were there any real world influences behind like the differences?
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked the kind of tribal kind of feeling because we say like the first two books are very tribal fantasy, right?
Mhm.
And my parents are both Hispanic, so I come from like that Aztec and that like that kind of feeling and that structure, and I've been around some of that stuff in the culture, and it's just I mean, we always loved the back to nature stuff too. Like, I mean, both Kate is a self-proclaimed hippie. I don't want to put that label
Yeah,
on you, but
it's true.
um, but it's just we are nature people. We love being in the forest. We love being in the mountains. Like we went to Yellowstone a few years back and everything. It I don't want to say it changed our lives, but it was such a wonderful experience, just being in a place where it's just like nature. Yes, I know there's roads and there's gas stations once in a while, but it's like the look of it all is I don't know if you've ever been to Yellowstone, but it's amazing, and it just inspires us more and more to kind of preserve nature and to figure out how we work and have a good view of nature in the stuff we do. It's very
I just want
important
to
to
cut
us.
in really quick here and paint
Yeah.
a picture for people listening. The first time I met these people, they were standing at their booth with a like green leafy
Yeah.
tendriling vine wrapped all the way around the outside of the roof, and they each had a plant sprout coming out of
Yeah,
their
we
hair,
did.
and their table had like lights lighting up like green plant life around the table. So just to paint a picture of the slightly hippie atmosphere.
A little bit, right? And crystals,
It's
that's
there.
also, yeah,
Right,
holistic. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I love that. Yep, that's us to a
Yep.
T.
So you two work as two parts in this, as a two-part team in this world. We already touched on that a little bit. Um, how did that come about? Like, was it something that developed prior to or after one of you started writing? Did you like Rio when you first started like coming up with this idea? Was it always something you guys envisioned doing together, or was the duo writing kind of its own development?
No, it was definitely a product of our relationship, I think. And I say that because Kate might have a different answer than I do. And it was like when you write with someone, you have to trust them. Like, and you have to know that they are either they complement you because they have something you don't, or they're working on that same level, right? In a certain way. And definitely, I can tell you, Kate is. She's not going to agree with me, but she's a better writer than I am. And I really do agree. I think that, and where I have some ideas and she has some great ideas, and she writes well, but my dialogue is, I think my dialogue is one of the strongest points of myself, whatever. And when we come together, we fill in those like little holes that we may both be missing, and then elevate each other to something greater. And I love that because it's again, I trust her. Like I never think it's like, oh my God, what kind of writing am I gonna get from her today or something like that. It's I just like I'll be like, oh, she wrote some new stuff. Let me go read it real quick. And it's always this wonderful thing of like, oh, this works. This is great, or maybe I need to fix this a little bit, or uh, and again, Kate, I don't want to like
Go ahead.
call you
I know
out
what
or
you're gonna
anything.
say. Yep.
She'll just write a bunch of stuff. Like she's very good at writing like large chunks of like stuff where I'm like, very meticulous, like, oh, I don't like that, or go back or whatever. And but then she'll write a bunch of stuff, but she'll jump around. And I'm like, oh, my job now is to like make sure all the stuff fits together, right? Because
Yeah.
she'll be talking about something, talk about something else, go back to talk about that stuff. And but that's kind of like the job of the editor or working together because I
Mhm.
want her to just feel free to do all that stuff she wants. And then I can maybe do my part and, figure out how we can make this sound better or work better or more coherent or whatever, you know?
And to go off of that too, one of the reasons why we started working on Valkis of the Greater Wilds together was so we both have our own worlds that we're both working on as part of Lovely Woods. And of course, Rio right now is the only one with his world in written form, written published form, let's say. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to write one of his supplemental stories, which we both have our main series planned out with supplemental stories to be written for both of those worlds separately. And I wanted to write one of his, specifically Valkis, one because I have some niches that I love is like Indiana Jones, but also my holistic, let's say hippie background. And I really wanted to write that story of a researcher going through these wilds. And one of the strengths that Rio has is deciding on what we're going to do and then executing it. Whereas I'm a like think through it way too long kind of person. I do the cardinal sin of writing of editing as I go, and we're learning new habits as
Sure.
we see
That's a
other.
sin. I'm going to hell. Like,
Excellent. It's not just me. Gosh, because
We're all right.
I feel like it's just different processes and it's just different methods of getting to that final product. But I definitely had a lot that I could learn from Rio from the process. And I think vice versa, we're both learning from each other as we do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it was just a joy to be able to, one, find another author that we trust to work together with. And that it was almost like mutually beneficial to a degree.
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, synergy, better the whole than just the sum of its individual
Right.
parts.
I love
That
corporate
really
speak. Synergy.
exactly. I mean, to be fair though, I mean, I'm a plumber and a writer, so it's not like I'm pulling that from any corporate world.
Sure, sure.
That really feeds into the next thing I was going to ask about, which is, do either of you have another style or genre or take on writing that you wanted to explore that was separate from, because obviously you guys have this combined world you're working on, and then Kate, you mentioned that, yeah, you have this whole other series you're working on. So what is kind of the main difference between these two series?
Ooh, I'll take that first, Rio, if you
Mm.
don't mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The main difference is, so it's funny, we both, and I'll say this for Rio too, we both are sort of writing in genres that are not our favorite to read, but we wanted to see these types of stories out there in these genres. So it's a little confusing. My own personal series, I would say, is more, when I say science fantasy, it's how to describe it, the Tolkien in space type vibe. So traditional fantasy type world, but just with more science fiction elements to it. Um, and that style is something that certainly interests Rio, but he knows that we both want to have our own worlds kind of separate for the most part. Obviously I'm writing in Valkis of the Greater Wilds, and one day I hope that he could write one of the supplemental stories for my
Yeah,
series. But it does inspire us to, we really want to write a sci-fi book together now, since
yeah,
we've done these other two projects. And so one day we will get to, but so we both love sci-fi. I
yeah.
will say that. But I also just have a heart for fantasy, and I love, who doesn't love dragons also?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's definitely that sci-fi show or book. Hopefully a show one day, right?
One
The
day.
sci-fi book I think is, in lack of better words, it's us on road trips, kind of. And I don't mean that as in a story plot, but it's just like when when you come together in any relationship, like again, it's all about what you bring to the table and how you present yourself to the other person. And we also want to do that fantastic like sci-fi feeling that we get from a lot of movies. You know, we're both big movie people, and we hope that this sci-fi brings uh like a really good feeling after you stop or after you end the book. Like that's the biggest thing because we want to. And what do we coin the other? I don't think we coined this,
Hope
but
punk.
hope punk. Yeah, like we want a lot of our stuff to be very hopeful. Like, there's we're
Yeah.
not big fans of like dystopian, and stuff like
We
that.
can't do
Like,
grim dark. I mean, I
or
can. It depends on the story. It depends on the
sure,
story.
I bet we could write it. Like, I bet we could do as a writer, you probably could do anything depending, just but we want like stuff to be a little bit more hopeful, and I think that we try to tell that through our stories. But to your point or to your question, I want to do a comic book so bad. Like it's ridiculous how bad I want to do
Yeah.
a comic book. But again, it's finding someone who you can trust that will be reliable and that maybe we're going to be doing a few issues for a few years, and somebody that will be there for you, and
Yeah.
that you
And
like
that you
the
can
artwork.
communicate with.
Yeah, yeah, and
Right.
gets your idea of what you're trying to get across. Like, I need you to make this monster and everything. It's like, and they draw a Muppet or something. You don't know what
Yeah.
that they're gonna come through. But I definitely want to do a comic book. And
Mhm.
that one actually will be even on the other side of just like the writing, where it's gonna be very comical and might be breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that. It's just as a writer, you just keep writing stuff and the stuff that you enjoy and that you like, and you find your way to making it somehow if you really want to do it. But and then to another side of that, so like again, if you have ADHD and everything, this is all normal. You're just going there, it's like, oh, there's something shiny there, and you're just kind of looking for all this stuff. But I'm gonna show you this, which is the first time anyone's ever seen this. So I'm gonna
Ooh.
Ooh,
we're breaking some things here. Get closer.
fun stuff.
So I love like D&D and stuff like that too, and RPGs. So we're making actually, let's see if we can get us a focus. This is a sequel actually. Hey, get in focus,
Nice.
buddy. It's a little, I don't know. I got to send better pictures, but
Maybe put your hand behind it. Is
oh
that a
yeah,
thing that people do?
oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, there it
So
goes.
yeah, so we're
How
making.
fun is that?
I've 3D printed this on a resin printer. But those are what the sequel looked like, at least from what the artist did. I'll show you another one. I'm just handing my and not just covering my face, I swear. But yeah,
Oh, wow.
Nice.
yeah. So, yeah. So we'll be selling those people, or selling those two people
Fuqua.
It's not
in
legal
the.
anymore.
Yeah, no, it's not. And it's not in my world either, so don't worry.
That's
But
good.
yeah, and that just because I want people to just bring. I want to give people enough stuff just to bring it into their life somehow. Like however people ingest their thing, I really, really want it to be something that they think it's cool and they want to enjoy it and they want to bring it into. And the only reason I
Mhm.
actually did this was because somebody told me when they saw some of the images from the Valkis that we have. They're in the Kate's book. Like we used a bunch of the commissioned art to um, to put into there. And then somebody's like, "Oh, these are really cool. Oh, we could use these in a like D&D campaign." And then course, light bulb. I made like little cards that have the stats and everything, and now I'm gonna
Oh,
be
nice.
selling like
Yeah.
a pack of four of these guys with a stat card sheet, and you can bring them home and play with them.
That is super fun. And I will say, like the cover art for Valkus of the Greater Wilds, I love
Yeah,
that cover art. Like it's a fairly, just simple, peaceful scene of, the person sitting on the hillside, but like the style of it and the composition is really lovely.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rio does take the reign in finding most of our artists online. So I'll give him a little shout out there.
Hmm. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's because again, finding people that you are one reliable and two that you like their artwork is it's very important. And Fiverr
Mhm.
is a great resource if you've never used Fiverr for it. And I have my people I like, and I keep going back to them, so it's kind of nice. They look forward to me, and I look forward to them.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah. You mentioned Hope Punk earlier, and it kind of like
Yeah.
some of your comments on Hope kind of resonated with me a bit because when I was in college, I majored in writing, and my senior year project was like a collection of writing I'd done over the 4 years, right? And one of the main comments my teacher wrote on it was, "Your writing is so, so beautiful, but at times I feel like I'm stumbling around in a dark room with no light switch,
Oh,
and I'm not sure if one's ever going to be offered. And one of the things that since then that I've kind of like matured in as a writer is just recognizing the importance of having a light switch. And it's something that's changed a lot in my writing that I've done, that I've published since the writing that I was doing when I was learning, like always making sure that there's a light switch, always making sure that no
hmm,
matter how bleak things get, no matter what area of the human experience you're exploring, there's always the notion that there is hope beyond the darkness. There always is light. And I think that's something that's very critical to writing. And even for writing that's intentionally bleak, I
sure,
think is strengthened by having that. If you read something by George R. R. Martin, there's even there in that super dark, dark fantasy, I feel like it shines the brightest when he does let glimmers of decency
sure.
or hope shine through. And it's an invaluable thing in writing that I think if you overlook it, you're going to suffer for it.
I would agree, especially because, with life there's balance. And if in order to have dark, you have to have some light. In order to have some light, you have to
Right.
have some dark. So that was very well said and quite insightful too. Like as I feel like for you, it seems like you learn with your writing too, or I don't actually know. It might be a chicken or the egg type deal. But I find it's very similar that we learn through our writing, whether or not we're sort of living vicariously through our characters to a degree. I think you do
Sure.
that sort of less as you grow as a writer, but I almost feel like we all start out in a way it's a personal journey to a degree. And then we get the craft down and then we develop and grow. But I just really like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's you have to have both sort of. And those shiny moments become even shinier when they're balanced well. Doesn't have to be 50-50, but you know.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys, in addition to writing your books and in addition to now your figurines and your D&D stat sheets and such, you also created your own audiobook.
Yeah,
And that's actually how I that's how I read or how I listened to
sure.
your novel was through the audiobook. And that's a roll of the dice for a lot of, indie authors to attempt that. Sometimes it turns out very rough because they just don't have the equipment or knowledge of how to use the equipment or the right voice for it or whatever. And then other indie authors or trad authors like Neil Gaiman or Travis Baldree have voices that would make a professional voiceover artist weep in jealousy. Like
Yeah,
it's
right.
it's the whole gamut. So you guys both did a really solid job with yours. It was enjoyable to
Thank
listen
you.
to. It felt well
Thank
executed and
you.
well edited. How did you guys come to decide to do that? Did either of you have any like performance experience before that? Was it something you learned as you did this project or something you spent time practicing leading into, like for creating the character voices and all that? Just what was that process?
I'm gonna let you say because I feel like you know what you're gonna say.
I do want to let you take this one, but I will just
Sure.
start with the previous experience type a part of the question. I mean I did of all of us, like we all did musical like in high school, things like that. I'm a musician, as you can see. And I've always loved the idea of voice work and broadcasting and being able to play with that in Lovely Woods was something that I was just very excited with. And Rio has actually had some videos that he's had me do voice work for before.
Hmm.
And it's just so much fun. So in a way, my portion of the audiobook was heavily directed by Rio, but and mostly his brain baby too. So I can't take too much credit. I was just there to have fun.
Yeah, and well, again, and we're already married, so I don't have to win any points, but I like her ability to do voices and her ability to actually speak well. It was such an asset because I can only do so much, and especially having a book with mostly female characters, only one
Yeah,
male. It's just like, oh
Right.
shit! Like I'm gonna have to do so many female voices and everything, which was an experiment and a test of myself, to try to see what I could do. But I'm like, please, Kate, just do half of these voices for me because I can't. Like I just can't because it's all gonna sound the same eventually. And
Yep.
um, but no, it was if anything, it's I wanted it. I wanted to have audiobook, but just again to have accessibility for whoever wants to listen or read to it. Because I mean, even if you listen to it, you just buy the book because those are your trophies you put on the on your bookshelf. But it was it was a money thing too. I'm not gonna lie because it does too. In order to get someone who is um really versed and actually is can do this very well, and also because when you pay someone, and you probably know this fairly well now too, is that it can be kind of expensive, and there's a lot
Yeah.
financially you have to put into that, right? Um,
This is a financial injury from which I will never recover.
no, because one day you're gonna be great. They're gonna be the next thing on uh Amazon Prime, and it's be like Wheel of Time, step aside. Here comes Justin Rose.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, but also like what Kate said, like it's fun to do. Like me and Kate and our parrots, like we will hear things and we will try to mimic them. And it's nothing like I had to stress this so much. It's nothing to make like fun of people or to like do anything. It's just like I want to know if I can do that voice. Like it is
Mhm.
literally just that. Like the mother character in my story is my mother and it's her voice. Like, I'm not trying to make fun of like Hispanic people or people like that, it's just that's how I've always heard her. And I wanted to,
Mhm.
if anything, honor her by doing that. And kind of
Better
funny
not make
side.
that character ever do anything too terrible, though.
Sure,
That's
sure.
right.
But as a side little note thing to this is like, my mom has a thick Hispanic accent, and but I grew up here in Minnesota, that's why I sound like this.
Mhm.
But I didn't know for like the first 10 years of my life, and I'm not even kidding you, that my mother had an accent. Like it was just what
He had no
she
idea.
sounded like. And so my
Yeah.
friend did an impression of her. I'm like, what? Like that's not how my mother sounds. Sure enough, go home and it's like, oh my God, like you broke the wall. Like it's how, and I couldn't unhear it.
Yeah.
Same thing with my father. He had a very thick, like gravelly, like Hispanic, like hijo, and it was just like this very deep voice, and I'm just like, God, thanks,
Well,
And
it's what
guys.
you're
Like,
that's
surrounded by. Like, I mean, I can't, like, I don't hear any accent when I talk to somebody from Wisconsin or Minnesota. I know we
sure,
have an
yeah.
accent. I know there is
No,
one,
we
but
don't.
to me, it doesn't sound like an accent, like at
Right.
all.
right,
Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't
right.
place it unless it was like a really particular subcategory. Like there's a few of them, like the Yoopers and such, who have a more specific
Sure.
dialect. But like the general Midwestern, Minnesotan, Wisconsin, like I hear nothing. It just sounds like neutral.
Right.
Right, right. And going back to like the mother being inspired by Rio's mom. So of all the accents that I can do, I can't do like a Hispanic or Latino accent. Like no matter what region it is, I can't roll my R's. My Peruvian abuelo and my Colombian grandmother are very disappointed in me. You know, beyond, may they rest in peace. But when we tried going through different voices of characters that I could do, I tried so many times to be Salil. I just couldn't do it. I could not. And like it just never sounded the same, or I couldn't do it consistently. Um, so that also helped divide up how we would do voices was based on like his vision for how this character would sound
Sure.
and whether or not I could do that or not.
I don't
And
know why I made like it's like British people in Star Wars. I don't know why there are British people in Star Wars, and I don't know why I made Ezra British,
there,
but
yeah.
there she is. Like, and it's why I wanted it. Like, it sounds so proper and like regal and everything. So
She's a leader, yeah.
she's a leader. Yeah.
Yeah. I got very fortunate when I did my audio project because I had a lot
Hmm.
of different voice actors and they're from like Australia, Canada, Netherlands, UK, US. And I told them all basically just like generic received pronunciation British accent. And
Mhm.
thankfully they all got it enough that it sounds uniform in world. Like
Sure.
there's a couple who stand out as a little bit different, but it's just they sound more like distinct voices than different accents. And I was like, I am so happy that they all got it that well, because I would not have been able to direct them. Like I would not
Sure,
have been
sure.
able to
Right.
like drill down into the details as well as they were able to.
Right, which is fantastic. Like, the one thing I really loved about your audiobook too was the atmospheric and the like sound effects and like that whole thing and the narration alone. Like, if you just had that, like you would have been doing great. But the adding all those voices is fantastic and everything. And to that to that point too, like I want to do that for the second book because I just finished recording like the entirety of it. But now I'm gonna
Nice.
go start hiring like you did other people to do other voices because I want to fill out these people because there's so many people in the cast now, you know.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so many in the second book.
Yeah.
If you ever have any questions about it, feel free to
Oh yeah.
look me up and ask, because like I did it and I made a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that it could have done cheaper or more efficiently that I
Sure.
will know the next time I do one. So I'm happy to.
Oh,
But
heck
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Thank
No,
it's an
we'll have to
you.
interesting
talk.
process and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So do you guys like record these things together, kind of alternating when you come to the lines, or do you do it entirely independent and then edit and splice it all together? What's the production process look like?
Just independent. Well, we actually converted a small walk-in closet into just basically a recording booth. We got little foamies on the walls and everything, and it was actually at one point it was my 3D printing room, but it's just now that, and that's fine because we keep some extra storage in there, what have you. Um, but we wanted that space because we said, okay, if we're gonna do better this time, uh, let's make a space for this, you know, so we don't have to set up every time. Little, and that's the biggest thing. Let me tell you, like having a space, having a space where you can just walk in, turn on the computer, hit record, and just go makes it so much easier for my dumb ADH brain, you know, to like not have to think like, oh, I'm gonna do so much work just to get this set up. Like, nope, it's there, get to work, you know, no
Hmm.
I
excuses.
hear that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Even
Hmm.
just for like filming stupid little like TikTok or Facebook Reels or something. I am so inactive on those platforms because I get stressed out and frustrated just with the
Yeah.
like little setup details and stuff, which realistically would take 5 or 10 minutes, but feels like a hurdle to every time you
Right.
want to do something like that. So having that little
Right.
like space set aside for it that like puts you into that zone that like tells you, okay, I'm coming in, I'm hitting start, I have my setup, this is what this is for, I would
Yeah.
imagine is pretty helpful.
I
It
hope that other people
is.
might use it too. I mean, Kate's gonna do the audio for Falcons of the Greater Wilds, and I mean, we should talk about this sometime too, but I'd love to do audio for our portion of the anthology too. Like, you know, that would be
Yeah.
really kind of cool and give that somehow as an extra thing. I'm not sure how that would work, but
Well,
I
sure.
want
Yeah, you
to
can even
have that
like
accessibility.
attach a link on the inside to it. Um,
Yeah,
Ooh.
a dream I have for it actually is like, so I plan to do one of these a year for however long, and probably the
forever.
third year, I'd like to do one of my like my contribution to the anthology as a script, like my audio drama was,
Oh,
and then like have a link to the performance of the short story. Like that's kind of like a couple years from now goal, but I think it would be super
sure.
fun. So yeah, it's something similar to what you're doing there with the audio.
Thank you. I mean,
Nice.
if you keep having us, we'll keep writing for you. So
And with
Nice.
the audiobook too, when it comes to my portion, so just to make sure that I'm hitting the dialogue in the way that Rio is intending, because there's always interpretation, right? And sometimes there would be points where he would take my interpretation, or he's like, no, I really need the inflection here, here, and here. And so it was a fun time. I use fun, you know,
fun.
in the best way because it was fun, but it was also very challenging too. And but in the best way because one, it helped give him uh practice with that directing, and it also gave me practice too for learning how to do uh voice work for audiobooks, which that was a new horizon for me.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the editing process, so it is all real. I did give a good college effort on learning how to edit, and it's so tedious. Oh my
It's a lot
gosh,
of work,
like
yeah.
it's so much work. Um, but it's definitely, worth it at the end and seeing what the product can sound like, I guess, not look like when it comes to
Yeah.
audiobook.
So, on the topic of like audio productions and such work, you guys have a new thing coming up soon where you're doing a podcast called Bards and Balladeers with Oscar Sahin, a pirate historical fiction author. Tell me a little
It's
bit about
true.
that project. Like, how did it come to be? What's the goal with it, and what format will it take?
It's funny because one of the original names that we tried to use but couldn't because it was taken is We Should Hang Out More. And that's one of the major inspirations behind starting that project was because the three of us, when we get together, we feel like we just have such insightful conversations, whether it's about life or our creative endeavors, that we just thought, you know what? Why don't we get together, start recording some of our conversations and try to explore this type of project because it was we were all kind of lacking in some degree with our like outreach like for um I keep wanting to say not clients, customers, all that jazz, viewers, readers,
Fans,
fans.
And
Yes,
yeah,
that's the
adoring,
word.
adoring fans.
Yes,
yes, that just
dying to
want
listen
to.
to us. Yeah, and so just another way of trying to reach out to those fans and in a way maybe even learn a little bit from each other along the way and to learn from our readers, our fans online. And to one thing for me also was I'm not the best at taking whatever thoughts I have internally and verbalizing them. So personally, that's just another reason why I really wanted to explore this type of medium, let's say.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to Kate's point was like we like doing cons, and the best part of doing cons is not just meeting other authors or, it's talking to people, and whether regardless if they buy anything or not,
Mhm.
your ability to express and to like just say something to these people is way better than trying to do that through social media, even though podcast is kind of like a social media. Um, but it's we you spend a whole weekend, and I don't want to ever say like it's not worth it or that you don't feel like sometimes you don't feel fulfilled, and we wanted to see if we could reach more people and just have more conversations to uh, get people either interested in what we're doing or our books or just talk to really cool people. And I think one of the things too with with being an author and just kind of society in general is that we have separated ourselves so much that we don't interact anymore. And some of the half of the things that makes anything worthwhile is who we share it with, right? Like even doing
Mhm.
this interview right now, like which we're internally grateful that you want let us be part of
Mhm.
the anthology, but two, that you wanted to just hear how we think or how we work and it just gives that self actualization, that self like just kind of interpretation, trying to figure out why you're even doing these things in the first place, right? And it just kind of gives you a better perspective in life. So doing the podcast is an extension of that, right? We're just trying to talk about these topics, talk about what it is to be creative and what those steps in or like tropes is one of the big things we did on our first few episodes, and we don't have a release date yet, so but I can give you a website you can go and get excited about. But yeah, it's just trying to communicate more, and that's kind of the idea with it about creative stuff.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Oscar is such a nice guy.
yeah,
I've not met him as many times as I would like to, but he's one of the earlier people who I met doing events.
sure,
And it's
Yeah.
always a pleasure anytime I bump into him at one. Like last weekend, I ran into him at MiniCon in Minneapolis.
Nice.
And yeah, he's just a genuine nice guy. I look forward to hearing some episodes of your guys' podcast. I'm sure it will have some very worthwhile insights. And doing interviews like that too, it gives you a chance to socialize in a way that you don't always have a good opportunity to outside of that format because doing the cons is great. Like you said, I love meeting other people, just the customers and the people passing through the cons, even if they're never going to buy anything, just hearing about their own creative pursuits or what they're doing, or, talking about a particular fandom if they're dressed in a character I recognize, like they're very
sure,
enjoyable conversations. But the other creatives there who I would love to spend time with, there's not always time for it. I might get dinner with a few of them afterwards once at one event and then see them again,
Sure.
half a year later.
Yep.
But to have the set aside time like you're doing with the podcast where you can discuss the things that motivate and move each of you about art and creativity, it's a great opportunity. Like doing these interviews has been wonderful that way for me as well. It's not going to be
Yeah.
as long lasting of a thing as yours. I'm just doing the ones for the anthology, but it was super fun to actually connect with some of the people who I've bumped into a few times at cons, or even who I've met a number of times at cons, but getting like a set aside amount of time to just discuss the art that we all like is so nice. What sort of people are you looking to have on this podcast? Like, is it primarily focused on authoring, or are there other art forms that you're looking to explore, or other topics?
Definitely it's creativity and wherever that falls, like, and that whether that be like artists, whether it be authors, musicians, even we even talked about like talking to lawyers, because if you think about lawyers had to craft like this whole story for their clients to try to get them either acquitted or who knows what they're trying to
Yeah.
do for them. But it's just like I, I almost feel like there's, if you look hard enough, you can find creativity in anything, like even
And
cooking.
story.
Yeah, story too.
Mhm.
Like, so as we'll probably have a lot of authors, we'll probably have a lot of, musicians, but other creative types. I do know I have a cousin who does a podcast, and I would love to have her on to see their perspective of just doing podcasts about anime. Like, it's everybody's got that passion, and I love how that manifests in so many people in so many ways. And that's, I think, one of the big things that we're trying to get to happen with this.
And anybody that I kind of like, I touched on a little bit earlier, I didn't want to interject too much, but anybody that has to spin a story to some
Mm,
degree are people that we're looking to pick their brains, get their, like you said, Justin, what their inspirations are, even their processes. Because there was, as we were going through a couple of the first episodes, that you realize things along the way as you're verbalizing them, as you're talking through them, that I can do that thing, but I actually don't like it, even though it's part of story and part of that grand scheme of the things. But you sort of don't realize these things until you talk them through. And that's, I'm excited to hear potentially any other story crafters, let's say,
sure.
or artists in general, creators in general, potentially coming to maybe some of those realizations as they start talking about things. But who knows?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
we want to have you
Oscar.
on for sure one of these times,
Oh,
just because.
appreciate
Oh,
it.
yeah.
No, it's only because, not only, but it's because you are being a curator of things is one, a whole work process itself, but it is like you had to have one, a distinct vision, but two, a way to do that and get through that, and then you got to herd cats. Like, it's, you just got to do a lot of work for that, so it's a big thing.
Yeah. Which herding cats is not fun for somebody who is by nature very much like non-confrontational. So
Sure.
that's it. That's in itself a learning process. I had to do that a lot with the audio drama too, where like it was 18 actors and most of them were absolutely fantastic and professional and great. But one or two, it was really like pulling teeth to try and get the files in on time, or
Oh, sure.
to get them to read the pronunciation or listen to the pronunciation guides or things like that. And so, you do have to figure out the balance of like being a decent human and also like getting people to do things.
Yes, that's
Um,
project management, ain't it?
yeah. Last week, Oscar had mentioned to me the idea of you guys talking to a lawyer on the podcast, also, which I found very
Nice.
interesting. So it's cool to hear that as an idea because, yeah, those are people who are crafting narratives with a very specific purpose and goal, and it's different from what a author, screenwriter, director, or creative of that sort does in what the goal is, but it's very similar in what they're actually doing. So I think that could be a really fascinating conversation.
Absolutely. You got to find a lawyer
Mhm.
first, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go get in an accident and they can be like, part of your payment
No,
Is no.
no.
I will pay you an exposure through our
Yeah,
podcast.
everybody loves that, right? Tell that to any
Yeah.
artist. They're
Exposure
like, yes,
bucks.
exposure bucks. Who's the face on an exposure buck?
Ooh, we'll put a poll out for that one.
Yeah,
There we go. Comment below.
yeah, right.
And so you guys also, you're building up your online presence. You have the podcast you're working on and different things, and you have your Lovely Woods publishing identity. So I was
Yes,
curious, reaching out, like if Lovely Woods Publishing was just something created to like contain you and your wife's work, or if it is a larger entity, because like when I go to the website, it feels like more of its own entity. And when I email you guys and talk back and forth, there's like a intermediary there. What was Lovely Woods created for, and kind of like how does that identity work? Because it helped you, do you think, with crafting an identity?
for sure. I'm gonna give all credit to Kate for this one, at least with coming out with the name, because she drew a little picture on a napkin. This is when we were first dating,
Hmm.
right? I don't remember if it
Hmm.
was at like a restaurant or where it was, but you just drew. Maybe you remember, like it was a
I want to say we were taking turns. It was over our lunch breaks, and like I drew something, then you drew a little something, and then I drew
sure.
something. And it was just this little tiny delicate picture on a napkin, at the
Everything
time
starts on a napkin, right?
of a little deer, and there was a tree next to it. I want to say like an evergreen type. And was the heart in the upper right corner
Oh
like the
yeah,
sun? I could be adding more to the visual of it.
sure. If you
Um,
actually now that I think about it, it's on our website, and it's this wonderful little thing that I have it framed somewhere. I don't know
I
where it is.
know.
It's do you have it?
I thought
It's
I did.
we
Could have
have
been
it. I
lost though.
somewhere
Sorry.
it's hiding in our house, but it's just one of those things where again being such nature lovers, we wanted to, and books are made out of paper, and that whole connection, and the idea of like staring at dead trees and hallucinating is was a joke, right? um it's just lovely woods full of stories, and that's really what we wanted to portray. um
Hmm. And
and
it's
it
okay.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say it also one of we designed that before we truly started to have anything published, before we had actually anything published. But when Rio went to go publish The Sun, it really was a desire for us to really build that credibility and start um just building that up in a way that it was just the two of us. So an indie publisher, I guess, to a degree. And since he already had a lot of experience with Big World Network, I don't want to speak too much for you with
No, it's
that,
fine.
Rio, but that's where majority of his expertise and just he's a self-driven learner too. And I knew that I could learn from him along the way. So one, credibility, two, we just wanted something with us. I don't know that
Yeah, even it's
really.
almost like if nothing comes out of this, it's it's a historical piece for us, kind of,
Mm,
because it has all the stuff that we're doing, and it's such a great like repository for that, right? And as we expand, like we wanted to be a place where people can find our stuffs, find extended previews, and just they wouldn't have to go too far to learn about everything we're doing, because we do a monthly blog there too, and you can listen to the first three chapters of the books, and the audio's on there too when it's available, and our store's there, so you can get signed books and all the extra little stuff, and pretty soon the little figurines, and it's
mhm.
it just was I just didn't want to do social media. I think that was me trying to avoid social media. Like I just like let's make a
Yeah.
website, and people go on the website. I don't want to go to them. They can come to us or whatever. But yeah, it's fun too because again another way to be creative, another way to just kind of I like designing and doing that stuff. Like for me, one of the best parts is not even writing. For me, it's designing the books. Like I love like putting a book together. Like that's oh good. I got to get a cover, and I get to design how the text's gonna look on there. It's a fun process.
It's cool. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like, well, I don't want to spend forever fiddling with the design of it. So I'm going to use Atticus, where I can work on everything
Sure.
based off of like templates and set things once and then make them all uniform and not have to
Right.
like
Love it though.
Yep.
exhaust myself learning Adobe InDesign or
Right.
Yeah, use
It's a
those
great
strengths and
program.
weaknesses, use
Yeah.
your
yeah.
strengths where on things that you actually want to spend your time on and use efficiencies for the things you don't, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
And so switching gears a little bit, what do you guys think, you've both worked in the same world, you've both worked on these stories. What do you guys think is your favorite thing that each of you has written and then that each other have written? So like not necessarily full projects, but like when you're both writing or working on these stories, is there a particular character or moment or plot reveal or element of structure or something where it's like, I'm really proud of having achieved this, or I'm really proud of it, Rio, or really proud of Kate for having achieved this? Like, what are those two things for you guys?
Can I go first, Rio?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Um, One of my favorite things that I'll say his first that I love that you did was realizing that Salil was actually kind of the main heroine or the main character of the series.
Yeah.
Seeing that development not only just in the story but also within yourself was so fun to see. And to it there was a humbling, process like with realizing that too. And I just think as an author, as a writer, that's what we all want, right? We want to learn and we want to grow as we're going from book to book, and there's no shame in that either. In fact, we're better because we learn it. And so that's one of my favorite things that you've done, Rio.
Thank
But
you.
for myself, that's tough. That's really tough. It's not published yet, but one of my favorite things that I've done with my own series is I have a character that I inserted in from a Pathfinder campaign that we'd done that was an evil campaign. And using that character, I think, has been just so much fun for me, because he's not a character that I would typically enjoy to see. He's kind of a jerk, and obviously, like the evil campaign helped inspire that and made me realize, like, oh, you actually do need characters like this, like whether or not they're a foil or just balancing out the party, um, is part of my partially like one of my favorite things that I've done. In a way, Hugo's a little similar because he's kind of a jerk to a degree, just
Hugo's
a
not a
little
jerk. How
a
dare
little
you?
selfish. Yeah.
He
It's
does have
funny
a
too,
single
because
motivation. Yeah.
you never know which characters are going to hit readers which way either. Because,
Right.
sometimes you write those characters who you think of as a jerk or whatever, and then it turns out to be your reader's favorite, or you write a character who you're
Right.
like, I think this person's the closest to a perfect character in my story. They're the most morally upright or justified. And then your readers are all like, ew, that guy's a loser. Like
Right.
it's really funny because like in my world, I have a character who is the goddess of mercy. She's meant to be the embodiment of the trait mercy incarnate. And to me, she's the best character in my world as far as like just moral decency, forthrightness, and all this goes. Like she's kind of the emblem of the closest thing to original perfection in the stories.
Mm.
She's not always appreciated very much by my readers at all.
Sure.
And then the darkest, most evil, nasty, irredeemable villain I've ever written was a guy named Helior. And he's the guy who readers will like crush on. And it's like, this just
Sure.
doesn't, I give
I
up. I
know
give
it
up.
doesn't, the math doesn't math somehow. I don't get it. You're right. People just love what they want to love. And in a
Right.
way, I guess it's almost like a gamble, but it's a fun gamble because we're going to make our characters how we're going to make them. And, but it's nice to know like who will be, you know, the chosen one with the fans. And
Sure.
just, I'm trying to think of like a way like you can make a game out of it, but I can't think of a way.
It's funny too because like you've even commented about Salil, my stories, and like she's not your favorite, and I
Right.
love her, and you
Yeah.
liked Ezra, and Ezra's like a secondary character, and
Hmm.
I because when she was reading through my second book, she'd make these little comments and she'd be like, Salil, that kills people. And like, and it's just
Charlie.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Does it? But it is just a wonderful thing that just how people interpret your work, and it's just what we do
Mhm.
have this for, right? It's for ourselves because we have something to get out of the brain, our brains are exploded, but it's also to see how people react to its art, right? Whether good or bad, people are going to react to this stuff. And but to your question though, I'll say what I liked about you first, Kate. Just I've because so you read me the first chapter of your new book and everything, and I love knowing where it started and where it's come to, and that you have continuously refined what you have been doing. Like, and it's like you never let and all your writing, never let anything just be okay. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to say like you stress over like whether or not it is, but you work towards that really good finite goal of um making it make sense and making it be the best possible thing. And even when you start writing Valkis at the Greater Wilds, again, I feel like these characters you're made are going to be better characters because they're some of the most organic characters that have
Mm.
come into the world, because you were given a playground and you just made these characters, where I always had the characters first and then I made the playground, even though I
Mm.
knew what I wanted to do with it. It's just that uh of Avalie, Hugo, and Ronnie, and that three people are going to be some of the best, my favorite characters. And I know it, like, just
Aw.
because I know what we're going to do with them.
Mhm.
And even though I have my book set out for 6 books, I know front to end and where they're going to go. Uh, there's something about that, like that you've added to my world that I will always be grateful and thankful for. So that's the
Aw.
one of the stuff that you've done for me. Um, but for myself, like Ryan Salio has been, again, making her the main character, like you said, because of like, oh man, like I wrote the first book and I kept on going over and like, and I'm like, Kate, I think Salio's the main character. Like,
I think
and
you
yeah,
not to
and I had to
interrupt
go
you.
back. It's like, well, now I got to write her story because I can't just
Right.
continue on from there and then try. Because I actually wrote a whole second book and then I didn't use it, and then I had to go and then like, because I kept on flashing back in certain points in that book. I was like, nope, I just got to write that whole story. So luckily, whenever I continue on from that point, hopefully writing that book won't be too bad. Um, but she became such a integral and such a important character to me, uh, that I love how she's going to struggle and become better and like uh just find her way to uh taking care of herself and her family and stuff like that. So there's a lot that's going to happen between the son Kamani and then the mother Salil, and that hopefully when I get to that last book, I'll stick the landing. We'll see. Like,
Superhero
but
landing.
yeah, right. So yeah, that's probably the best. I mean, I haven't written a lot, but I like what I'm doing now, and I hope to only get better, because as you write more, you get better, right? The second book's way better than the first, if only because of how much more fun I have with it, how much like it just flows better, I think.
Yeah, last week I was interviewing Richard Sweitzer for the same series,
Mm,
and the thing he brought up in the interview was, if you're doing things right, the book you write now will be the worst book you ever write, and the writer you are
nice.
now is the worst writer you'll ever be.
I love
Yeah,
And
that.
it's like, and that's a sign that you're doing things right. And I think that's a really good way to think about it. That, like
absolutely.
you got that sixth book that's 4 books away.
Yeah.
You're worried about sticking the landing on it. But if you're continually working, continually honing, actually trying to improve, the goal is that it will be 4 steps better than where you're at now.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
genius. I absolutely love that.
And it brings some hope
Yeah.
in too, because
Hope
even
punk.
as authors, yeah, we need hope too, that we're not just doing this just to get a book out, that it's something that hopefully maybe will be timeless to somebody, and that it gives us something to work on just to also be better people. So I love that they said that. Like, that's so, I love that. Ah,
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned, you had pretty much the whole second book written, and then you realized, oh, all these flashbacks and stuff are feeding into a separate story. I need to write that separate story. I actually did the same or similar process with my book. So I have two books called Ageless Part One and Two, and I started writing Ageless Part Two as its own story, and I had all the backstory in my head for the characters, but it was only meant to be that. It was only meant to be a backstory.
Sure.
And then I started writing, and the further I got in, the more I realized this doesn't stand by itself. There is so much more going on behind it that I was about halfway through, and I'm like, okay, I just have to write an entire book first
Sure.
to establish who these people are, why they're at where they at, and all of that. And when it finally came about to going back and rewriting that one, I think it's my favorite thing I've written. Like I think that one that I created to plug a gap that I
Sure.
didn't realize existed was probably my best work. So,
Yeah.
it's how the creative process works sometimes.
It's
Right.
true. And I think it also points out that sometimes things just need to stew in the brain for a long time and to be also inspired by the other things that you'd written around that too. It's almost like going back to that creative box that we're kind of stuck in, but not stuck in. Like such a joy to be stuck in that creative box because then you get to do so much more with it. And I feel like it almost forces more creativity to a degree.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, the question I've been ending each interview on is, was there a story or series or author that you guys read that really inspired in you the desire to become an author yourself? I think for a lot of us, that's the case where like there's something we saw that struck a particularly resonant chord and made us go, I want to work in that medium. Was that the case for you guys at
Mm.
all?
You want to take
You
that first, Kate?
know, I kind of want to. One inspiration that I had growing up was it's a book called The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. And to be honest, I haven't reread it in like, oh, it breaks my heart to say a decade. But just knowing that it was such a simple story about this one girl going to on her own adventure to meet this family. And there is a movie actually based off of the book. I think they're both very good. I don't think one is actually better than the other. Because the movie has some powerhouse actors and actresses that I think it's definitely worth watching, but also reading the book too. But one of the reasons why I think that helped inspire me was because it was just one girl on a journey and exploring things along the way and making some pretty big realizations about herself along the way too. Some a little bit more uh, hopeful and some less so than the other stuff. But that I haven't really explored saying that out loud, I won't lie. But it did only because it's being a writer, like you've said before, Justin, too, that it's all about exploring something. And whether it's inside yourself or something new that you're learning to write, or that you need to learn to write. Um, I just found a lot of joy in doing that and being an observational creature too. It writing almost felt like poetry, but I can't write poetry. Like I'm actually a horrible, even though I'm a musician, I'm a horrible lyricist. I liked sticking to the music mostly. But when it came to I started getting into like middle school and started reading bigger long form books like novels and just realizing like, oh, like you can do this. Like any person can just get a Word doc and just go on for pages and pages and pages of just description and story and characters. And so I kind of went on off a little tangent there, but it's definitely weird to think about where what initially inspired you to where you currently are. Because I won't lie, current inspirations almost like complete 180 from inspirations when I was a kid. But ain't that life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, it was a weird thing for B. Because I don't know if any books really inspired me to to write and everything, there was two things. I mean, I always watched movies. I was a visual guy. Went to school for digital media production and video media production, and I always wanted to do movies and everything. But again, like it takes such a big team to do any of that stuff. Like you you can sometimes do stuff by yourself, but it takes either an extraordinary effort or like a extraordinary circumstance to give you the ability to do that. And like with books, like I'm dyslexic and everything, not enough to like really have the words dance around my page, but enough to like I had to read stuff over a few times, you know. And reading in front of people, oh man, like let me tell you, that is one of the worst things that I could ever imagine. I did it right, but it's just like I had to read the whatever I was gonna read like 10 times just to make sure I wasn't gonna fumble it. And I did okay the first time. Um, but like, you know, I was part of a publishing company that um me and two other friends had started back in like 2012, I think it was when I did this. It might have been earlier than that. No, I think it was 2012. The world didn't end, surprisingly. But
Got all about that. I had to like think for a second. I was like, oh yeah,
Right.
that was a thing.
yeah,
The
I was like,
Mayans.
oh, the Mylan calendar, it's over. Um, but I got into it because I did a lot of like, you know, graphic work, and I did a lot of video work, and I was familiar with Adobe and Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff. I learned InDesign just so I could put together books and everything, and I was making covers and doing all the kinds of stuff, and it was great, and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, it didn't fall through, and we couldn't make it profitable, but you know, it was fun. But it gave me the experience. But if any books gave me the like uh the thought that I could do it, it was reading and seeing all these books I was putting together and everything. And not because like I thought any of them were bad or I could do better than them or anything, but it's like people were unafraid to just tell a story. Like
Mhm.
like all of these, we put together like 75 books over the course of, I think it was like 4 or 5 years. And that was amazing to me. Like, you know, and I, and my good friend Amanda Mavison and everything, she was the managing editor of this company, and it was just like her inspiration and how prolific of a writer she is now. I think she has 30 or 40 books out now since that time, and it's just like you just had to have the drive and the will to do that stuff, and seeing that whole process and being part of it was an eye opener, and it was wonderful to see because I loved being able to help people make their books a reality and everything. It's like, hey, I can do that too. You know, like I just gotta get better at writing, and you know, we'll see where that comes. But yeah, other people,
Jolly
A
good.
good editor. No.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for doing the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for taking part in the anthology. I'm sure I'll see you guys soon enough down the road at some of the other events coming up.
Will you be at Des Moines?
But yep, I'll be there.
I'll see you there then. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
You guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Best of luck with the podcast and the other projects.
Thank you so much, Justin.
You too.